Morning Majority, the Grandy Group on 630 WMAL.
8:07 on the Grandy Group. It is Brian Eamon and Fred Grandy.
All right, the current discussion about the budget is about the 2 or 4 week continuing resolution, how much, how little. I want you to look upon that as spring training. The real season on the budget and spending begins once Congress sits down and decides what to do about entitlements, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. The lion's share of all of that is decided in the House Ways and Means Committee. The chairman of that committee is Dave Camp. He represents the 4th District of Maryland. He was elected in 1991 as a Republican. He still is one, and he joins us right now. Mr. Chairman, good morning.
Well, hey, Fred, great to talk to you. Hi, Brian.
Hello, Dave.
So let me ask you something. You're saying we got to make difficult decisions today because the country cannot, and this is your quote, cannot grow under this mountain of debt. So can I assume that you're thinking about taking on entitlements this season?
We are going to propose our budget in April, and obviously that's going to be a consensus document. But I do think, and the Speaker has also said, that we need to address entitlement reform if we want to have a long-term growth sustained in this economy.
So, in other words, you're not going to wait for the president to make a proposal on entitlements. You guys are going to get out in front.
We are. I mean, the president didn't lead, and presidents are elected to lead. We do need to have, it would be helpful to have leadership there, but look, we're at 100% of debt to our economy. We've had 21 months consecutively of 9% or greater unemployment. We're really being crushed under this mountain of debt. A lot of the debate right now is about this year's budget, which we're already 5 months into the year, fiscal year, and what you're asking me is about next year's budget, which we need to begin to debating.
By the way, I remember when you got elected in 91, I was still there. Did you ever think you would actually say that in public, that our debt is now at 100%?
No, I never would have imagined it. We sure miss you on the committee, Fred, I'll tell you that.
Okay.
All right, correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I looked at it from what I heard from John Boehner this weekend essentially was, we're going to work a deal out with the Democrats for this year's budget, but in the next year, the one you're talking about in April, we are going to bring entitlements. Entitlements will be a part of that. I saw that as a message to some of the Tea Party's candidates and or guys in Congress and constituents out there saying, look, we're going to have to make a deal now because we don't want to shut the federal government down. A deal will be made there, but we will get serious with the next budget, and that will include entitlements. Am I wrong about that?
Well, what we've been talking about in terms of this year's spending is just what they call the discretionary side, which
right.
is about a third of the budget. The entitlement side is about two-thirds of the budget, and they're not sustainable in the long run. And so it is about how do we go forward in the future and have programs that will help those who are older, help those who are having difficulty. How do we make those sustainable in the long run? They're not sustainable on their current trajectory. Look, the president's had 2 commissions. I served on the debt commission. We've got the information out there. We know. Do we want to do this under a system where we can try to manage this, or are we going to wait for a crisis where then we'll have results that nobody will want?
You anticipated my next question because you were on the Debt Commission. I'm just curious, as the chair of Ways and Means, obviously with complete jurisdiction over the tax code, are you anticipating a tax reform package will be part of any kind of meaningful deficit reduction?
Well, I do think, obviously, in this effort to focus on creating jobs, we need fundamental tax reform. It was the first hearing I held as chairman of the committee. We're having another one tomorrow. I'm hopeful that we can move ahead on that. Obviously, in a business sense, we're not competitive around the globe. We need to be competitive. Individual side, we know the complexity. Americans spend 6 billion hours a year complying with the tax code, so compliance is difficult. We do need a simpler, fairer code for individuals. We need a code that's competitive for business employers. I'd like to very much work on this. I'm obviously going to hold a number of hearings and try to see if there's consensus. Obviously, this will be an important issue, and you can't do it alone as Republicans. We'll need to have Democrats also join us in this. That's why this year we're just beginning conversations on it, having hearings, getting the kinds of information we need from the American people, from experts and economists around the world. What is the best approach? And I hope then we can move forward.
All right, if you do include entitlements in the budget and real entitlement reform, obviously you're going to have enough votes in Congress to pass it on the Republican side. But there's, the Democrats still control the Senate. Do you think there will be enough Democratic senators to go on board with real entitlement reform?
Well, the budget's always a non-binding document, so it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to do this. But we do need to. I think the American people understand that we need to make changes, but they may not always fully understand the depth of the issue.
Mm-hmm.
So we do need to put this in the public debate. We need to have a national discussion on this. How do we have these programs like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security sustainable for the long term?
All right, let me take you in a totally different direction, and excuse me if I blindside you a little bit, but since the committee does have complete jurisdiction over the tax code, I think it's fair to say that terrorist organizations, if they are in this country, should not enjoy tax-exempt status. Is that a fair statement, Mr. Chairman?
I think that's one I could agree with.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Knowing that from the Holy Land Foundation trial, there are organizations like CARE and the North American Islamic Trust and perhaps others in this country that currently enjoy 501c3 status, and there is now growing data that perhaps they're using this to funnel money to terrorists, would it be appropriate for your committee to investigate the status of some of these organizations just to ask some questions that have not been asked yet? And I say that because your colleague Peter King is fighting that battle on another front, but the Ways and Means Committee is normally not involved. Is that appropriate?
Yeah, it certainly is appropriate, and it's something I'll certainly take a look at. It hasn't been in these early months my direct focus, but it certainly will be now.
All right.
Thank you, Dave. We appreciate you coming on the show as always.
Dave,
right, thanks.
Before we let you go, is it still true that the Ways and Means Committee is to Congress and to the House committees what the Marines are to the military? You still got to be a little better to be on the Ways and Means Committee? That's still true.
I certainly would agree with that, and I'll tell you, when they really have something tough to do, they always send it to Ways and Means.
So, in other words, you're not just the chairman, you're the commandant, right? Gotcha.
Thank you,
I don't know if the members on the committee would agree with that.
I'm speaking for you, of course.
Thank you, Mr. Commandant. We appreciate you coming on the
Thanks,
show.
Dave. Take care.
Dave Camp, a Republican from Michigan, chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee here on the Grandy Group. Well, listen, I'm telling you, from what I read from Boehner's comments this weekend is that we're going to make a deal. We have to make a deal with the Democrats for this year's budget, essentially to fund it so we don't have a government shutdown. But trust us, we're going to get into entitlements next time around.
I trust him. I mean, Camp has been talking about this for some time. He was on the Debt Commission, and the best thing of that interview, to me, is he's saying, look, the president has not put markers down on this. We're going to do it first. Now, he may not have a consensus on that. There are a lot of Republicans that say, what are you, crazy? Let the president hang himself out to dry. But if Camp, and Camp controls 50 cents of every dollar the government spends on that committee, okay, he can make a huge